November meeting and date, even though we didn't necessarily, we're not necessarily going to vote on what we intended to when we shifted the date, but I appreciate everybody's presence nonetheless. So we will, I'm going to start by doing attendance. Liz Mallard. Jamie Villegas. Give me patience. Yep.
Present, no conflict.
Dr. Exandria Inslee.
Conflict.
India Prangarsh.
Present, no conflict.
Drew Freeman.
Present.
Say it again.
Present. Present. Conflict.
Deanna Allen Robb. Michelle Southard. Andrea Hancock.
Conflict. Present, no conflict.
Meredith McLeod Jolin. David Lango Martin. H.G. Stovall.
Here-ish.
I'll take it. Catherine Knowles.
Present, no conflict.
Alyssa Fernandez.
Present, conflict.
Rico X, present, no conflict. Ashley Horton. Lizzie Goddard.
Present, no conflict.
Shahab Martin.
Present, no conflict.
Angie Lawless. Stephanie Cooper.
Present, no conflict.
And Councilman Rutherford, John Rutherford. Councilwoman Erin Evans. Councilman Jacob Kufin. All right, now at this time, we want to give a moment of silence to those that have passed. These names are not solely indicative of those that passed in the previous month, but just as we do cleanup, it incorporates people that may have been missed. Cortez Bell II, Jovan Blackman, Gary Campbell, Jerry Crutcher, Sherry Dybeck, Mickey Gentry, Terry Jackson, David Jacobson, Delaney LaPlante, Otis Murphy, Peyton Owens, Julie Savoy, William Van Fleet, Lee Williams, and Vanell Wilson. Let us take a moment of silence. Thank you and God bless. All right. You have, members, you have received the minutes from our November meeting. Are there any amendments, adjustments, and or may I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion to move to approve the minutes of the November meeting as written.
Is there a second? All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed? All right. Motion carries, and so those minutes are approved. We actually have two people that have signed up for public comments. If you could come to the podium right there. First, I have Ms. Dee Dee Bird.
One more time. There we go.
There we go.
I watched the memorial this weekend. Thank you for letting me speak. I have a couple of observations. I want to say that in this arena, I've been here, as most of you know, for 5 years, and I think it's very important that everyone understands that they are needed. Everyone understands that this is evident by every month we have a moment of silence for all the people that have passed away, and that there's a time and a place for comments, debriefing, plans, and that a memorial service is to memorialize the individuals that we've lost. It's not political. It's not personal, except for to the people who were there to memorialize their loved ones. Everyone has value. This job takes faith, hope, and love. With faith, we can all find a path to help these individuals. With hope, every single one of you gives these individuals hope that they will be successful and that death will not be their end game. So, love is the most powerful. Everyone in this room is loved. So thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you. And next we have Mike Lacey.
Thank you, Dee Dee. There's an agenda item, I believe, about a data breach, and I want to come in case there were questions about it. I think that there's discussion about if it qualifies as a data breach or not. And just quick background is I was speaking with Ms. Deegan about a month and a half ago about concerns I had about people that were being evicted within a short period of time being placed at some housing facilities with landlord engagement funds from OHS. And the question to me was, well, how do you know that they were placed with that? And I said, well, I have the invoices with their names on it. And that was observed by her, and I can understand why, is inappropriate that those names were included on a public records release. And just the question I have sort of towards more Metro Finance than anybody is, there's a track record of the city redacting the names of vendors on public records releases, which from all like research I can find is illegal. That's not proprietary information for the city to keep. And so I just find it concerning that there seems to be no question about releasing the names of vulnerable people that appear on the financial transaction history, but two national nonprofits, they are censoring the names of who's receiving information. And that's from a Metro Finance general level. That's not OHS specific thing, but yeah, I think there's a broader conversation about what is protecting people's information and who deserves to have their information protected that the city kind of needs to examine itself on. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so we're going to move to unfinished and old business. And the first action item, or the only action item for today, is the funding reallocation policy. If you all remember, Carrie presented at the last meeting, and so this particular policy has been vetted and placed on today's agenda for a vote. And so first I will hand it to Carrie, and then we can have conversation and then potentially vote on this reallocation policy.
Good morning, y'all. Thanks for having me back. Everyone, I believe, should have a copy of the reallocation policy. I don't know how many of y'all got a chance to look at it last month. If you did, we only made one very small tweak since then. And as I said last time, this was an attempt to get our reallocation policy to be a little more detailed about the logistical process of it all, both for transparency and for the purposes of our committee and this committee being able to effectively ensure that we're channeling funds to the best places for them to go. So this reallocation policy just kind of overviews that process of reallocation. It contemplates both voluntary reallocation and involuntary reallocation, which can occur in the event that there's long-standing poor performance issues with a certain project. When we had initially drafted this, we had made it clear that we were trying to, when we initially drafted this, the community's priority was increasing permanent supportive housing. And though that hasn't necessarily changed, in light of the new NOFOs that are coming out of DC, we tweaked it a little bit just so that in a situation where expanding permanent supportive housing is not an option, we still have the means to be able to reallocate funds. So I am happy to address any questions if anyone has any, yeah, it would be great. We would really appreciate it if we could get this passed so that in the upcoming cycle, if and when it happens, we have a pathway for reallocation if we decide that it's appropriate.
All right, I'll open up for questions, comments. Alyssa?
It might have been mentioned, but just remind me. Say, for example, it was like youth funding or DV, domestic violence funding, that is decided to be reallocated. Would that go to another use of youth or another use of DV, or could it technically be used for any kind of fund use?
That's a good question. Really, the only types of projects that we addressed in the policy were permanent supportive housing, just to ensure that we weren't going to use it to move money away from that. You know, I anticipate that the committee would be looking at that closely. You know, I don't believe we'd be looking to take funds that had been allocated for DV or for youth and, you know, move them into something else. Certainly we wouldn't do that without the authority to be able to do that. So to some extent it would depend on, you know, what money is available, where is it coming from? And so, yeah, no, there's nothing in here that specifically addresses that, but I appreciate that question.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Jamie?
That being said about, you know, making sure that funding is, you know, if reallocation has to occur for a certain project or whatnot, I'm assuming that this document has passed muster with Metro Legal in that regard.
Yes. And I do appreciate the question. I think, for instance, like there was originally in the original draft of this agenda, there was another action item that we were going to vote on, but it did not get the kind of the full recommendations from legal. So, you know, my commitment is to never put something on the agenda that at least doesn't take into consideration any legal ramifications. So this one did pass that test.
I didn't want anyone to have the impression that legal has found tremendous issues with the grievance policy. It's just due to some scheduling issues. I haven't been able to actually sit down with the committee chair and discuss issues. Oh, I'm sorry. So we're planning to do that right after the new year.
All right, well, with no additional questions or comments, is there a motion to approve this policy?
I'll make a motion to approve the reallocation policy.
Okay,
Second.
all right. All those in favor, just affirm by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. It appears that this has been approved. Thank you so much for your work with the committee, Carrie, and this has been approved. So thank you.
Thank you all so much.
All right. Next, we have a presentation regarding the interim housing strategy report and highlights. And so I'm going to hand it over to Allie Wallace, who will present these recommendations to us.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name's Allie. I'm Executive Director at Open Table Nashville. And I am here to present on interim strategies for responding to unsheltered homelessness. So this was a work group that took place over the summer. I don't know, do you all have the packet in front of you today? I know it was distributed last month. I'm not, okay, no, okay, sorry about that. But this is definitely something that can be sent out in your follow-up materials. So, but this really just came from, obviously we know that unsheltered homelessness has increased. There are people that are outside in many, many cities across this country. And unfortunately, we have seen a trend nationally, both in the federal and state level, that a lot of punitive measures are being explored. As many of us know, here in Tennessee, it is a felony to sleep outside on public property. Tennessee remains the only state that has made their anti-camping law a felony, so it is the harshest one in the country. So in light of these punitive measures that we are seeing happening, we decided, Lindsay Crinks at Open Table Nashville facilitated this working group, but it was made up of 16 different people. We had some technical assistance from HUD, there were people from OHS, other service providers, a couple folks from Vanderbilt as well, and so tried to have a broad spectrum of people represented. And we met over the course of 10 weeks and basically just wanted to do an analysis of what interim strategies does Nashville currently have, what are we utilizing, what are sort of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities of the current strategies we have, are there new strategies for consideration that we don't have here in Nashville that we could explore, what that might look like, and then at the end, wanted to put together some recommendations, hopefully with the idea that this wouldn't just be a packet that sits in our inbox or stays on a desk, but can be something that we can maybe get some tangible, actionable items around. So I'm just gonna go through some of those. And so obviously we know that the most effective solution to ending homelessness is permanent supportive housing. But in the meantime of those and knowing the increase in outdoor homelessness, it is important to explore interim strategies as well. It's never been more important to advocate for permanent life-saving housing resources and solutions. We must lower barriers to existing interim options and work collectively and strategically to mobilize existing community resources that will have the largest impact in our city. The lives and well-being of thousands of our neighbors are at stake and demand that we act. So our group came up with some guiding principles for us through our work. That's listed in the packet as well. And so we started with our inventory of existing options. I won't go through all of them because it's a little lengthy, but in the packet, each one of them, the group we would divide them out and go through the strengths and concerns of each one. So a first example are tiny home communities. And examples of that here in Nashville are the Village at Glencliff and Green Street Church as well. And so some of those strengths are private space to stay, they are the potential to be pet friendly, there's access to supportive services, it's an approachable option for people who are transitioning from living outside to indoors. Some of the concerns are around the land that is available, folks willing to use their land in that way. It's done on a smaller scale, so not many units available at one time, and there can sometimes be the ongoing maintenance concerns and the costs with that as well. And then some of our other choices we went through were hotel conversions, as well as creative use of faith community space. So whether that's our navigation centers or different things like that, which we see through Launchpad, Community Care Fellowship. Another example is also medical respite. And then, so we looked through those, and then we also looked at some new strategies for consideration. What are things that don't exist in Nashville that we're not currently utilizing? So an example of that would be a safe parking site. So that would be a designated area where individuals and families can safely park their vehicles overnight. And we had a presenter from a national safe parking group come and present and share about that information. And so we know that there's a lot of folks in Nashville that are living in their vehicles and often have to be pretty transient with how that looks based on a parking lot that they may or may not find that they can stay in. And so the strengths of that would be that it provides a way to meet the high need for safe places to park. It's a low-cost solution because it uses parking lots that already exist, that are not being frequented at night when whatever the parking lot is associated with is not in operation overnight. And then there's also the potential to rotate among different parking lots as well. Some of the concerns with that would be, of course, finding people willing to say, yes, please use my parking lot for this. I would love people to safely park here at night. Ongoing supportive services costs, it would be limited to vehicle owners, though there are a lot of people who are in their vehicles. And then, of course, the environmental concerns of what it means to be in your vehicle if it is extremely cold or hot. And so we looked at that as an option. We also explored and looked at a presentation from a temporarily supported community with tents. We looked at a presentation from New Mexico for that. And then another one we talked about were low barrier, geographically dispersed shelters. So we know where our primary shelter is, the Nashville Rescue Mission, and just talked about the nature of congregate settings being difficult, and it's crowded, and some of them have barriers, whether you are with a partner, or if you have a pet, or if you are on the registry as well. So thinking through what a low barrier, geographically dispersed shelter can look like, both from like accessibility of the transportation to get to a shelter, being able to bring your pet with you, multi-generational families being able to stay together, etc. So we talked through that as well. Something else that we implemented was a survey. So we received feedback from community members with lived experience of homelessness. And again, this was a very time limited deal. We met over the course of 10 weeks and did the surveys over a 2 to 3 week period. But in that time, we were able to collect 248 surveys. And they were from people who are both currently living outside, or have been housed but had previous history of homelessness, or were currently utilizing a current interim option. So there were some folks at Community Care Fellowship and at Roadway as well that were surveyed for this. And the 248, and there's a data breakdown in the presentation, but the sampling largely represents what our overall HMIS data looks like for people experiencing homelessness as far as the demographic breakdown. So I was pretty proud of the sampling, given the timeline that we did it in. But in the survey, folks were asked, what is working for you? And obviously the number one takeaway in the answers were permanent housing. We all know that everybody wants housing. But we were like, okay, well, in the meantime of getting permanent housing, what would interim strategies look like for you? What would you want those to look like? So that we survey questions were asked around barriers to existing options, and then if they could design their own, what they would want that to look like. So the two biggest barriers that came up to existing interim options were no space, too crowded, and lack of transportation. So whether they could get to an interim option, or if they felt that that option suited what their needs were based on space and crowding. And then the most desired interim strategy were the motel rooms, motel hotel conversions, and tiny homes as well. And a lot of the response in the surveys were because of the privacy that you get, that you have your, number one, you have electricity and plumbing and heating and the way to take a shower and have a thermostat and all of those things. But the biggest takeaway was the privacy of having a door of your own that you can close. And that was important for a lot of folks. But a couple of things that were said that I wanted to share from folks. This was someone that's currently unhoused, said, my interim strategy would be filled with lots of like-minded people, people that care and assist, a clean, safe environment with all the things that a person needs to transition. And then another person said, an effective emergency housing option would be low barrier. It would focus on rapid rehousing and include a wide array of supportive services. And then another person said it would feature culturally sensitive, individualized support, allowing residents to maintain autonomy and dignity while providing the necessary resources to address the root causes of homelessness. So after we went through and sort of did our assessment of what do we have, what don't we have, strengths and weaknesses of those, incorporated our survey data, we came up with a list of recommendations, and we pulled together 10 of them. And so I will go through a few of them that really stood out among the group as important to try and pursue. But one of the biggest recommendations that we came away with was continuing to advocate for the creative use of church land. Here in Nashville, there is an incredible amount of land with faith communities. And because of the way that zoning laws exist, they have a lot of creativity and agency and freedom of how they use the land that they own and are exempt from certain zoning laws because it is on faith-based private property. And so what would it look like to mobilize our current assets and create a dedicated group made up of key stakeholders and to create an additional tiny home community, and a tiny home community that had the option for safe parking on site with it. Another one that came up was to advocate with members of Metro Council to gain their support to champion one interim option in their district. So what would it look like, particularly around the idea of these low barrier geographically dispersed shelters? What would it look like to have our council members sort of across the county to advocate to have an interim option, whatever that may be, in their district, and to have their support on it? I can't look any of them in the face today because they're not here, but I would be looking right at them. And I know they would support that. Okay, a couple other ones, and then I'll wrap up, and you all can certainly read this packet and report on your own time. Something else we wanted to do, and to also utilize our other committees that exist within our COC, was to request that the Standards of Care Committee create sort of a standardized survey and feedback mechanism so that all of our continuum of care participating interim options can gain feedback on what's going well and what could be improved. And so having feedback come from Roadway, from CCF, from our interim options that exist. And then another one was to utilize our Housing Opportunities Committee. I think that's Jamie and David. Yeah? Oh, yeah, good. There you are. Utilize the Housing Opportunities Committee to help inventory real estate and development opportunities to expand additional hotel and motel conversions. So it's really just taking this packet and getting it in front of people and being an advocate and providing the education around why we continue to need, yes, we need permanent supportive housing. Oh my goodness, yes, we all know that, right? And then in the meantime of people being outside, what are we doing in the interim time of that that's creating some more safety and dignity for folks than being outside, which we know is not a safe option for people at all. So I can answer any questions. Obviously, you'll get this report and can look at it, but just wanted to hit the highlights of our 10 weeks together as a group. So thanks for letting me share about that.
Well, first, Ally, I want to thank you for presenting this and being a part of this effort. I particularly really appreciate it. I think the balance between benchmarking other communities as well as taking stock of the expertise that we have here locally. I think that was just very well done. My question is, in addition to the recommendations for two of the committees of the COC, is there, just in your opinion, a particular recommendation that you would charge this body or this group to strongly consider or advocate for?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of these can be incorporated into the work of this council. So a couple of the recommendations are also around convening members of the philanthropic community and continuing to provide education. And that's something like, yes, as a group you can do, but also as individuals in your own spaces and network, whatever your background may be or look like. So to continue to let people know about the work you're doing, right? In your network, do people know that you serve on this body and what it means and what you do, and to provide that education on why you serve on this body and why you participate, I think is really important. Because one of our recommendations is to facilitate opportunities for the broader community to engage on these issues. So that is a great one to do. I think another one that would be really beneficial as well. So we created an inventory map of all of our current strategies. And so we're trying to figure out, and I think something else that's important is for the HPC and all of our committees to be looking at the same data sets all of the time, right? Some committees look at this, other committees look at that. And what would it look like to come up with, we need all of our committees looking at the same data. And I think having that map in front of all of our groups is super important to look at. And so I think that would be really important. And as a body to just continue to stay up to date on the committee work that's taking place, who we're bringing to the table around these conversations, and continuing to help convene the necessary stakeholders that we need in these conversations.
Are there questions or comments? Hearing none. Thank you so much for your time in presenting that. And I know that we had sent it last month, but I'll just make sure that everyone receives that copy again.
Thanks,
Thank
y'all.
you.
Thank you.
All right. For new and other business, first we're going to get an update on the NOFO and HUD lawsuit. And so, Allison, if you want to kick it off.
Okay. Am I on?
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning. A lot has happened in the last month. So quick recap. HUD issued a NOFO very, very late in the game. It had a lot of very concerning things in it, particularly around, de-emphasizing housing first, taking funding away from permanent supportive housing. There were lots of language around communities aligning politically with the administration. And so several cities, states, counties, and nonprofits, including the National Alliance to End Homelessness, sued in objection to this NOFO. The first court date, I believe, was 2 weeks ago today, and less than an hour before the hearing, HUD rescinded the NOFO. And so, with the NOFO having been rescinded, we put our local competition on pause because there was no NOFO at that point. So in the meantime, we've been hosting these weekly NOFO meetings every Tuesday. The purpose of those have been to talk through solutions, especially around the NOFO as more information comes out about what can and can't be funded, talking about contingency planning in the case of funding that may be lost, and just creating a larger community narrative so that everybody is aligned in, having kind of one message. So there was a hearing on Friday. And, as y'all know, I am not a lawyer, so you have to bear with me. Our office watched it. Essentially, the preliminary injunction was granted by the judge. So there's a certain bar that has to reach. They have to prove that it, causes harm to the community. The judge was very clear that it was very obvious that it causes harm. And so she granted the relief that was asked for. They declared the 2025 NOFO, the one that was released like a month ago. They said that the conditions in that NOFO are not lawful. So that NOFO the judge has determined is not in effect anymore. And we are sort of still under the old NOFO, the 2024-25 NOFO that was issued last year, the 2-year NOFO. So that is like the 2-year NOFO is kind of the law of the land right now, since she rescinded the most recent NOFO. So because she determined that the conditions in this new NOFO were not lawful, she said that any new NOFO cannot contain those challenged terms in it because they're not lawful. During the hearing, HUD's lawyer indicated that they planned on issuing a NOFO that very day in the afternoon. The judge was not amused by this. The judge was aggravated that during both hearings in the case, HUD released NOFOs on those days in what she said was an attempt to sort of delay the hearings. So she was unhappy with that. We are still waiting on the judge's written order. She did issue, like a verbal order and an oral order from the bench in which she said she granted the injunctions, but her written order should have a lot more detail in it because there's still a few things that are not quite clear right now. So we're just waiting on that. A NOFO did drop on Friday night at like 10:30 p.m. I haven't gotten all the way through it, but there are concerning elements for sure, including the timeline. It outlines 2 different tracks for funding, a normal track, and then an extended track for new permanent housing options. That's, to my knowledge, has never happened before, certainly not happened recently. In the email where HUD announced the new NOFO, they said, quote, HUD understands this NOFO to be enjoined based on the preliminary hearing. Again, not a lawyer, but what that says to me is that HUD understands that this NOFO is not in effect. And it says HUD will not implement or enforce this NOFO pending further court order. HUD will issue further clarification on the status of this or any future NOFO as necessary. HUD will provide further notice as to when the application portal will open. So, but having heard all of that, the timeline on this, the turnaround is pretty quick. So again, lots of unanswered questions. This NOFO may or may not even be legally effective because of the injunctions that were granted. I believe that the judge indicated that she will need to review any new NOFO. So we are waiting on further guidance. I haven't seen any guidance come from any large agencies right now because the NOFO just dropped at 10:30 on Friday, right? So the last business day before a holiday, the weekend before a holiday. So we're waiting on this, waiting on that guidance. I'm scouring to make sure that the second we have updated information that we're able to share it. I know that the case is still open. With the NOFO being released on Friday, I imagine that there will be further filings. But sort of stepping back, the judge issuing the injunctions, that is not the final step. That doesn't mean that the case is closed, but it is a positive step. And she did, rule in our favor. So I think that's a harbinger of something good. And we are just continuing to monitor things as closely as we can. If anybody has any questions for me, I will certainly try to answer them. Yes.
Thank you for that very helpful update. I appreciate it. Could you clarify, so with and again, I know you're not a lawyer, I'm not holding you to this, but with the 24-25 being temporarily restored for agencies that are still technically under those grants, are they able to draw down funds? Should they continue to, at least for now, assume that they can run their programs? Do we have clarity on that?
We don't really have clarity on that. I haven't checked ELOCs since Friday, and I don't know if any of the funded agencies have to see if it's been suspended. ELOCs for me has been open this whole time. you know, the major thing that the judge talked about was funding gaps. And the lawyer for NAEH said, you know, like, even if you guys today just said, we're going to issue a blanket renewal, that still would not process in time for some of these projects that have end dates that are really early. So that piece around funding gaps to me is unclear.
Other questions or comments?
Thank you guys for being patient with us. This is obviously nothing like this has ever happened before. So we're doing our best to stay on top of it.
Thank you. All right. Next up, we have Shanley, who's going to talk about the HMIS.
Hello. Okay. You guys, I'm in like a Dayquil haze right now, so just like bear with me. Yes, Shanley Degnan, Chair of the HMIS Oversight and Data Committee. Unfortunately, I'm here today to report on a data breach that has occurred. There's a lot of information here. I think that what makes sense is for me to kind of like tell the story of what happened, make sure that makes sense, and then dive into the action plan that we've come up with. Metro was involved in this data breach, so whereas usually the HMIS team would be taking the lead on this process, we felt that even the appearance of a conflict of interest, that didn't make sense in this situation. So the Oversight Committee is taking the lead on that. You have a fair number of documents in front of you. I'm going to be referring to this one, the Policy and Procedure Violation Report. There's a lot of information here, but basically in summary, as you all know, Metro is obligated to produce reports for public records requests, which is sort of how this all happened. There were various public records requests for the landlord engagement funds, which, as we know, is operated by the Office of Homeless Services. This records request was actually submitted to Metro Finance, so not OHS's finance department, but big Metro Finance. And when that information was released to the public from Metro Finance, it was not redacted. There's been a debate if this is an actual HMIS data breach because the information was sort of secondary materials. And the answer is yes, it was. The landlord engagement funds can only be accessed by people entered into coordinated entry and HMIS. And HUD technical standards say that any secondary information relative to HMIS is still considered protected. So just to clarify that on the front end. The information that was released was invoices that had been paid out from the landlord engagement funds. They included 259 client names, a copy of their lease, which includes their new permanent address, their landlord's names, their rental amount. In not all instances, but in several, it also included contact information for the folks, so their email address and their phone number. If they had either or both of those, they were included in the documents. So, pausing for Dayquil, sorry, 1 second. So at that point, and Mike got up and made a public comment, the records include who actually received the information. So there were 2 concurrent records requests being made about the same thing, sort of. We had Councilwoman Ginny Welsh requesting information, as well as Mike Lacey, they, again, pertaining to very similar informations. And so when that records request was released, they both had access. As Mike said, this information was given to him, and I think it's in one of your reports here, in June. And it wasn't until towards the end of November that I heard that this information was available. So obviously flagged that that was inappropriate and immediately notified the Office of Homeless Services. And we had a meeting to try to identify what had happened. At that point, it wasn't super clear which Metro Department had released the information. So let me pause there and see if you guys have any questions about what happened, how we got here. And or just an excuse to drink water.
Just for clarification, like the reason Metro Finance had this information is because like they were paying invoices submitted to them based off of these dedicated funds.
That was my understanding. There was a document that I received on Friday evening. I did not see that until late last night, and I'm not sure that it made it to y'all just because of the timing. This document was from the Director of Finance, Janine Reed, as well as their legal counsel, Wally Dietz. This is the first time that I had seen this. I know part of our action plan is discussing what, if any, confidential information has to make it to the finance department in order for invoices to be paid. And in this document, the first time I've seen this language, they say, the legal department has determined that the personally protected information in the invoices should not have been put into Metro Payment Services in the first place. So that's new information for me and not something that we had really incorporated into this action plan. So my understanding was that yes, and now here we have information that maybe it shouldn't have been there in the first place. I'm not sure how to reconcile that. Any other questions before we get into the action plan? This I will ask. I don't know who was on the original email, but I think it should be something y'all see as well, since it pertains to this. So I know April was also on this email, wondering if you could also just forward this to the, cool. Okay. So now.
I do have one. I'm so sorry. It just popped in my head. Is this the first time we've had a request like this?
No, that is, public records requests are kind of constantly happening. That's our right as citizens to ask Metro to produce, transparent records about their business. And so, no, I believe that there's sort of regular requests.
Okay.
And I would say that there's probably been an increase. Obviously, we've seen a lot more media interest in homelessness in the last several months, or kind of waves of that throughout the years. But I would say this is particularly important now because there is so much interest, and also with federal language around reporting to the police. I think it's really important that this is squashed now, forever, moving forward.
Yeah. So what was different about this one that allowed a breach like this?
So in this next section, the policy violated, I didn't know about all this, but there are actually a lot of local and state laws that would say this should never have happened. So I would say the difference here is that the request was made to another department, and I think the Office of Homeless Services is very diligent to make sure that this doesn't happen. But from my reading of local and state laws, this shouldn't have happened regardless. It doesn't really matter which department received the request. It shouldn't have been released to the public without redaction.
Okay, it was the first time this department got a request like this.
I would say that this is definitely the first violation that I'm aware of that's happened like this. I know there's been other instances throughout the years, but this is the first time that I've been made aware of a public records request to this scale having been released unredacted. Okay. Any other questions so far? I think it's important to say, just kind of name the policies here that I've listed. The entire policies and procedures manual for HMIS is sort of geared around protecting this information, although I put one very specific one about making sure this information doesn't get released anywhere that it's not supposed to. So I listed that specifically. When you receive this online, you have links to the Metro policy, links to the state law, obviously HUD's privacy requirements, and then this is particularly concerning to me. People who experience family violence will likely also be included in the 259 names. Hannah, I believe, was putting together a list. They did receive the information that was released. So they are compiling and starting to reconcile like who was involved and see who, if anyone, was someone additionally protected because they experienced family violence. So I think we're gonna begin to consult with Mary Parish Center and anyone else who has expertise in that to see if there are additional steps that we need to take if any of those individuals were part of this breach. Okay, now moving on, and I know that OHS has also put together an action plan in the various meetings that we've held, and I'm definitely open to feedback here. We've put together what we feel like is a pretty comprehensive action plan. We're asking Metro and OHS to do 7 things. One, which has already happened, is identify with Metro Finance what data was released. So that's now been obtained by the HMIS Oversight Committee, and they're working, like I said, to come up with a list of names. 2, we would like a written plan and timeline for how impacted clients will be notified. This I'm gonna put an asterisk on because there's some question marks I have about this one. We'll come back. 3, determine what resources can be offered to those impacted clients. I don't know if anyone's had like a Target email where they're like, hey, your information was leaked. We can help you with a credit check or something like that. So that's the kind of thing we're wondering what resources are available, if anything. 4, contact the known recipients of this information. This is one I'd like to urge. We know, Mike's in the room, this is funny. Mike and Ginny have not been contacted formally by Metro, and I would like to urge that happen immediately to request that that information be destroyed. 5, create and share a written Metro policy that requires public records requests related to OHS be reviewed by OHS in order to properly redact personal information. I'm gonna put another asterisk there, and have the clerk release a statement about this new policy to other Metro departments. 6 is primarily about training any other departments that could potentially have access to this protected information and ask that they receive additional privacy and security trainings. And this, I think, was also already handled. The second bullet there, determine if the information going to the other departments is actually necessary. And as I think we heard from the finance thing, I think the answer is no. I think they're working on a plan to process invoices moving forward without any of that information leaving the Office of Homeless Services. And 7, we're asking for an update on progress at the next Oversight Committee on January 26th. The Oversight Committee is going to, following this meeting, if any additional feedback is gathered, start a formal conversation with Metro just on paper so we know like what the progress is, make sure everyone's on the same page. We will continue to review updates and the plan and continue to take the lead on follow-up and communication. And in the HMIS Oversight Committee, there was a request for this body to discuss if it would be appropriate to ask Metro to hire a third-party entity because of the scale of this breach and because at this point Metro is overseeing Metro's process. For the follow-up, we're wondering if it should be discussed at least about that possibility. Okay, gosh, I've been talking a long time, but want to circle back really quick to the 2 asterisks. I'd like to ask for this body to talk about what we think is appropriate for a timeline for how quickly we think individuals should be notified. It's my understanding that sort of like big Metro legal here has said that they don't have an obligation to contact folks. That has definitely not been the position that the HMIS team has taken. They do feel that that would be appropriate, but I would like for this body to kind of formally make a recommendation about the time frame for that process and maybe identify who will be formally doing that task. The other thing, and this has come up in all of the instances where we've talked about this, is the concern that some of these new processes potentially infringe on the public's access to public records request information. And the goal is certainly not to reduce access to information. And so I think it would be helpful to talk a little bit about that and maybe have a better understanding about what is required by Metro in terms of public records requests and how long they have, just so that in, adding new layers of oversight, we don't lose access. Wow, so sorry, that was so much. Questions?
Hold on, I'm going to get Jaha first.
Jenny Welsh.
Just one, great work. I like the recommendations. And I hear you about us making a recommendation to notify people. And I think that's maybe what you're asking is what would that process look like? I'm concerned, like, if we're asking who would be the entity, of course, we do not want to violate these persons' rights anymore. So it would seem like that would automatically fall to OHS if they have that information versus any other entity getting that. But I guess also if Metro is saying they don't have an obligation and we make the recommendation to the Metro entity, I guess that would be the willingness of OHS. Is that my understanding?
I think so. I think in this instance, there's the complex role of OHS as a Metro entity, but also as the HMIS lead. So whereas they and their Metro, and again, the HMIS team has been wonderful in wanting to comply and do whatever is best and right. So I'm not concerned that they wouldn't be willing to. I think it's more just like looking for guidance on how to do that best. Because I do think you have the authority to make a firm recommendation to them as the HMIS lead.
Gotcha. Okay. That was just my question. I'm totally in favor of that. Just, I guess the recommendation is that, for me, I would just add that it would be OHS. So there would just be no further breach of information. Like none of us would need to get that information to be able to call. And it is unfortunate. And it's unfortunate that Metro Legal is taking that stance, just to be honest.
Drew?
Just wondering who the council person was that.
It was Councilwoman Jenny Welsh.
Okay. And I guess I'm just from my knowledge around HMIS, is there a unique number assigned to every record that could then be used to identify that person and not have to use any other?
Yes, and I think it's already the practice in like internal emailing between, service providers and HMIS folks. They're already using that rather than personally identifying information. And again, because OHS knows that they are, public records requests could access their emails, they're already in practice. When I was on the team, we were doing that, and I know that they still do that now. Yeah.
But this isn't, can we use that number on the invoices so that that information does not show up, but that number can identify who that person is?
So I think that part of April's report will be talking about like new procedures for communicating with finance. It sounds like finance actually needs a lot less information than what had been previously, assumed. And so moving forward, I think there will be, I'm going to let April talk to that.
And on the funds to cover the cost of trying to communicate to people, would that come from this body or from the finance department?
Can you say that again?
Yeah, are we responsible for what it takes to kind of rectify this, or is it finance department?
I think Metro wants, again, to do like the right thing and make sure this can't happen again. But I think that just kind of like a firm position from this body will only help support that movement.
April, did you want to? Oh.
To your point that the information that has been shared has not been recalled or invited to be destroyed. Whose responsibility is that? Because I feel like that's the most important first step to take, is to make sure that what was shared is destroyed.
In my Shanley opinion, Metro Finance released the information, so it would be my assumption that Finance should be responsible for calling it back. I don't think that doesn't mean OHS, the HPC could also formally request it, but I do think it should be formal and from Metro.
And I feel like it should be immediate, and so I wonder if Metro Legal has a guidance or how we could move forward with that, certainly as an immediate first step.
Is it on? The guidance that I would give anyone, if they're in possession of something that they believe has been subject to a release of information that they shouldn't have, they shouldn't do anything with it themselves anymore. As far as the notifications to those individuals, that's what's currently being discussed. And legal only gives opinions. We don't implement. So I don't know where the notification piece of the pie is. April can probably address that.
Could I just really quick, I want to push back just a little bit because human error, that's always going to be part of this process. So the idea that the public is then responsible for the information they shouldn't have received, I hear what you're saying. And I do think in this instance, both individuals know and aren't sharing. But I just want to say, I think it's not really their responsibility. It shouldn't have gotten there. So I think it is kind of...
I didn't say it was a responsibility. I said my recommendation is if they are aware that they have information that may have been confidential or intended to be, that they should not further disclose it, even in the absence of any formal notification. That's all I'm suggesting. Particularly if they're involved with HMIS systems.
Neither of them are. But I understand. Maybe
I'm talking about anyone that might be, that may now have this. Because the disclosures may have gone beyond the initial recipients, is my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a list of who all it may or may not have gone to. So I can't very well give a recommendation other than if anyone thinks that they may have received some of this information that contains either a client name or a copy of an address, that I would recommend that they not share it any further. It's kind of like the old adage, it's hard to retract the information when we don't know where all it may have now landed. That was just a general recommendation. I wasn't trying to lay the fault at anyone. I was just suggesting that they should take care to try not to, further cause disclosure.
Thank you.
India.
Just a couple of things along that conversation. I think it just seems like it would be pertinent for there to be some step in, now we're creating this formal process for, hopefully this doesn't happen again, but in case it would be, for there to be, who is going to be the entity that reaches out to the people that did receive this information. Like that needs to be a step, whether that's coming from Metro Legal or OHS or whatever body. So just want to clarify that or point that out. And then from what I've read, again, also not a lawyer, but the specific criteria might not be met in relation to Tennessee state law that dictates like the time period in which people affected by a data breach need to be notified. But just wanted to throw out that state law says folks whose information is involved in a data breach need to be notified no later than 45 days after the discovery of the incident happening. So just wanted to point that out there. And then, again, and this is jumping around to a few different points, but just wanted to point out that I was wondering if Metro already has like a vendor that they use for the action step, talking about determining what resources can be offered to impacted clients, like credit checks and things like that. And then I know this was before my time here, but I know there was a data breach a long time ago when like the Homelessness Commission still existed. And so I don't know if there was, I'm sure it exists somewhere in record, like what was the procedure that was followed then, because I know that, it was the kind of the same situation, right, where this data breach happened and then things weren't being disclosed to the people impacted by it. And so, and I can try to find that also, but yeah, this has happened before, and maybe we, can reference that and try to have this process in handy in case it happens again and we're not spinning our wheels, trying to figure out what to do.
April.
Good morning. I do want to say this is not something that we as OHS take lightly. From day one, we've been actively involved in working on this process with Shanley, the data chair. Also, we are reviewing our policy and procedures because the policy and procedures does say that if you are processing an invoice, the information can be shared with the finance department as you're processing the invoice. It says that in the policy and procedure. So that's something that we can work on addressing as well, so that we will modify that language. I think Hannah's also wanting to look at other things to modify in our policy and procedure as it relates to processing invoices, the security and safety and privacy of individuals. So that's really important to us. We've also reached out to the Office of Family Safety to get guidance from them on how to notify individuals that may be fleeing domestic violence. And whatever guidance we get, we're going to use that for all of the individuals that receive the funding, not just for the individuals that were a part of a DV project. I do want you all to know that. Most all of the other things that's here, I don't want to repeat, are things that Shanley agreed to with our office as well. You have all of these documents in your package, even the document from Finance and Legal and the document from us. I think that the timeline on notifying the individuals and or notifying the individuals, Council Lady Welch and Mike Lacey, we'll work with Finance on that.
Thank you. And I just want to reiterate, OHS, the HMIS team, you know, everyone takes us very seriously. I've felt no pushback at all. Like, everyone definitely is working collaboratively. So I really appreciate all the effort that's gone into making this right. One of the things that we wanted to include in the policies and procedures moving forward, as India just mentioned, there's no current language about the reporting to impacted folks during a data breach. So that's something we will work to fix immediately. Any other questions for me?
Thank you, April and Shanley. I just want to make sure I'm crystal clear. So OHS is the responsible party who you guys are going to notify the 259 families? Okay, but that's the intention. Okay. And then do you guys have a sense of timeline? Like, could we ask for a report out in January? I mean, I think no matter what, that would be helpful to have an update.
Hannah's not here. Sweet Ruby's daycare is closed for 2 weeks. If you have any small kids, you know what that's like. So, but that's something that we will discuss with her on a timeline. By the time we come back in January, I would easily say yes, but I have to remember that it's not a full month away because this is December 22nd. So more information to come, but at least we can have a timeline by then, I'm sure.
True. Yeah, I just want to make a recommendation that the agencies, when appropriate, that entered the people into HMIS get notified. Because I'm thinking about my case manager who sat in front of this person and told them that wouldn't happen. That now they have to repair that, and they need to be also a voice in this mishap and help them navigate what happens after that. So I'd like to know if any of my families were involved so that we can then case manage around that.
I hate to belabor a point, but so in terms of communication to Mike, who's here, so we're communicating, but to Mike and to Jenny, is that something that, so OHS is going to let them know, or finance will let them know, but like, can this body issue a statement to the two of them that, you know, at our meeting today, we became aware that you've received this sensitive information and destroy it and don't share with anybody else? Like, could we take some action on that?
I think we can. I mean, we can formally vote that correspondence from this body be sent to those two individuals and make a formal request. Even though, I mean, I think even though we're not implicated in this, but I think that is something that we could actionably do.
Okay, then I would like to move that this body issue written correspondence to Mike Lacey and to Councilwoman Jenny Welch, that we learned that they have received this sensitive information and we need them to destroy it, to not share it, and that they will receive additional information maybe from finance and OHS, but that is our request.
Is there a second? I got a second. All right. Any questions around that? Andrew?
Thank you. Oh, am I on?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, and from my understanding, listening, the information was shared to those two individuals, but may have been forwarded to someone else. So would it be that they're responsible for forwarding our message to those who they've sent it to? How does that go? You know, because even if there are people that they shared it with or shared it with someone else, it could be never ending. So how do we address that?
I'll speak a little bit more to that, actually. Mike, not knowing that what he held was confidential, protected information, and being curious about the invoices themselves, those invoices were actually linked on Substack for several months. So there's really no way to call it back at this point, which is why their notification is really important. Yes, the second of my meltdown in front of Mike, he took it down. Yeah.
All right, any other questions? All right. So all those in favor of this body just sending a formal notice recommendation to those two individuals to destroy that information, say aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? One abstention. All right, so that motion carries. And so I will work with you, Shanley, to draft something and get that out. And then we will what the expectation will be any additional information or actions that have been taken between now and January 14th, we'll just make sure that that is reflected in old business and reported out on various levels. So thank you so much for, I think, just taking this seriously and just working with the HMIS and OHS team, Shanley. So we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. All right. So now we are going to do committee report outs. Allison. Okay.
Morning. Good morning, everyone. I am not the lovely Kenna Hasler. She's on vacation, so I'll be short and sweet. Alrighty, so general membership meeting did meet last Thursday. Attendance was fairly low due to the holidays, so unfortunately they did not have a quorum to be able to vote on the grievance procedures, so that will be on the February agenda. The PEC has finished their draft of the reallocation policy that Carrie filled you in about, so they are focusing on preparing for the local competition. The PIC count committee continues to diligently plan for the PIC count that will occur on the night of January 22nd. They have officially wrapped up the training for the team leads, so they'll work on scheduling the training for the volunteers here soon. The PIC count methodology will be in front of you at next month's meeting, so you all can vote to approve that. And then just a note that there will be a kickoff event this year, just like we did last year. There'll be t-shirts, bins of supplies, and other fun stuff. The Data and Oversight Committee meeting met this month. They have been working on that supportive services survey that you guys have heard about before. And then we also talked a lot about this wrongful disclosure of client information. The CE Oversight Committee is currently working on designing an evaluation tool to evaluate the CE lead, and they are working to inventory resources in the community. And then lastly, our Initiatives Efficiency Committee has completed that draft of the grievance procedure to be voted on at general membership and then by the HPC. And I think that's all.
One thing that I just wanted to, I think, just officially make note of is with the efficiency task force, it's not technically a formal committee, that work was scheduled to end at the end of this calendar year. And they essentially had a specific task of coming up with a grievance procedure, which we're almost at the finish line around. But just to note to this body, there was kind of a question of, to what degree, are there some additional projects or work this group has been working very diligently, and I think we wanted to continue to leverage that energy. And so I have had a preliminary conversation with Alyssa, who's the chair of that task force. And so we do have a couple of preliminary ideas, but we would like to continue that work at least through June of next year. So just FYI, more to come on the kind of the specific project. I don't think I gave a couple of ideas on Thursday, but we will nail that down and report back to this group, I believe, in January. So just wanted to make you all aware. Any questions, comments? Okay. All right. With that, I will go ahead and adjourn. And I wish everyone a very happy holiday season and look forward to seeing everybody in the new year. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.